Join me in welcoming Gaurav Gupta, who's now building Gabit.
The Gabit Smart Ring.
The smart ring.
But people aren't willing to spend too much because the people who care about health and can pay a lot are perhaps only a small fraction still in the country.
What we realized definitely after COVID that health is important for people. Now for different people, different aspects of health might be important. When we launched our Gabit Smart Ring, I thought only probably in the beginning only the tech forward or slightly younger folks will actually adopt it. 45% of our ring users are 40 years and above. Unbelievable. The first question is, what do you eat?
Yeah.
Nutrition has a huge role to play in skin or healthy skin. I joined Zomato for almost like no role. It was like, come build this.
Okay.
Let's do whatever it takes to build this. And a lot of people ask this question, like, what does that title mean? How do you get that title? It is not a title. It is just a mindset. Can I become a founder in a company which I did not start?
Welcome to the Indian Silicon Valley podcast. I'm your host Jivraj, and today I have with me a very special guest. Before I dive into the conversation, I'm really glad to share that we're now a part of the Zerodha Media Network. For today's episode, I have with me a very, very special person who has a very multidisciplinary background. Somebody who spent 10 years in consulting, was a principal at a leading consulting firm in the country, and then decided to join one of India's premier startups, a growth story and a success story that we've all seen in the form of Zomato. Join me in welcoming Gaurav Gupta, who's now building Gabit. Thank you so much, Gaurav, for joining me.
Hi, Jivraj. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. As I was mentioning, I think what I'm most fascinated by is the trajectory that you've taken over a period of time, from graduating B school in 2005 to then pursuing consulting for 10 years and then deciding to join Zomato at a time when, as we were discussing, food delivery was not even the business model. It was listings. I would love to understand what was it about the startup world that caught your attention? And considering that we hear that the consulting mindset is perhaps non-execution, and I'm stereotyping because of the benefit of the conversation, but the mindsets are very different. So what was it in terms of, what that made you make the switch, and what was it like to join Zomato at that time?
So I was doing consulting and I'd done consulting for 10 years. Was very happy with consulting, living in their own bubble. And it all happened by chance. So Dippy just pinged out of the blue, didn't know him earlier, and we just met.
Nice.
And when I met him, I realized that I really got excited with the mission and how he was thinking about it and how he was building it. And I said, this is one thing that I probably want to try. But that was never the plan. I didn't know what I was getting into, to be honest. Right? But I think it's one of the best decisions I've made in my life. It was a game-changing thing for me. I think the biggest thing everybody told me was that the difference is that, of course, when you do consulting, you help people take decisions. It's very different from taking decisions on your own. But I think as I got into Zomato, as I understood what had to be done, I think it's the best thing you can do. So I thoroughly enjoyed it and learned over a period of time. But that's what happened.
Very, very interesting. But in terms of the risk, in terms of the unlearning that you had to go through, are there any deeper insights to say that, okay, you evaluated the pros and cons? I'm sure your left brain must be super active, living that cushy, comfortable life and reaching a point where most consultants aspire to achieve and then letting it go. What was that like? What is the deeper insight there?
So at that time, everybody around me told me not to do this. They told me I was a fool to do this. But I went with what I really thought I should do at that time. It was not easy. So I think it was a big switch for me. Coming from a consulting environment, which is super structured for 10 years, and then getting to Zomato, a startup so aggressive on its mission, right? So I think I took some time to understand how Zomato operates. In fact, interestingly, the first thing I did at Zomato was recruitment for 3 months. And when I did that, I realized that was probably one of the best things I could do when I started Zomato, right? Because it gave me a perspective on what are the kind of people that Zomato looks for, what are the kind of people that actually can make Zomato work. And after that, did one thing, we launched a new business, ran that for some time. Even in that experience, what was surprising for me was that when we sat on the table to say, okay, we want to launch this particular business, it was mind-boggling to understand the expectations we had from ourselves in terms of speed of execution. And I used to be like complete disbelief that how is it even possible? It's not possible. But after we did that, my belief in just that thinking and putting that ambitious goal just went up like crazy. So I think one thing after the other helped me just understand, but of course it was not easy in the beginning. I was trying to understand something that we do, are they right? The way I think is right. So it was a tussle in the beginning. But eventually doing one thing after the other helped just
Nice. Yeah, no, definitely. And it showed from your trajectory because from looks of it outside in, it felt like, you kept doing better and better at the organization. You were COO very soon and then elevated to founder. We'll get to that. But talk to us about the mid portions. Like we see Zomato in the current avatar doing multiple things, but at the backbone, there's so many things happening. There's an international expansion that was pulled out. There were many other things happening. Hyperpure happened during your time. You've seen the entire ambit. What was that like, and what were different things that were happening within Zomato during those years of just hyperscale?
So initially, when I joined, we were just a listing business, and we were just thinking about food delivery. In fact, we were late to food delivery.
Yeah.
Most of the players had started food delivery, and we were busy building the search and discovery business globally, and which was again a great business. And we realized that we have to get into food delivery. So having realized that, we had to put everything behind it. And food delivery was a very different DNA business than search and discovery. That's a very ads focused business, but this was all about like data, numbers, scale, pace, all of that. So we basically got into that and we started building. And eventually, as we scaled, we realized that one of the things which was most important, if I look at the journey, was the belief that we had. Because when we started food delivery, most people around us to actually laughed at us, saying that you expect somebody in India to download an app, order food from an app for 300 rupees. Yeah. You will deliver that food order dedicatedly and make money out of it eventually. Yeah. And I think when you hear so much of disbelief, you of course question whether this is really possible. But if you just believe and keep chipping at it, you can get to where we have reached to right now. So I think that was the one learning for me that's super important for anybody who's building to have. Over a period of time, when we thought about what else could Zomato do, it was always about the restaurant ecosystem. So how can we have different offerings which can actually help the ecosystem, the users, the restaurants? And that's why you see dining out, delivery, hyperpure, all the synergies coming together. But at the same time, at one point in time, we realized that we also need to have immense amount of focus. We have to build well in this space. Sure. And that's where we took the call in international geography, some of the other business. We said, okay, all the might that we got, let's put behind the highest growth engine and the biggest opportunity that we have in front of us, which is food delivery. We did that. And of course, that happened most of that happened before COVID and just around COVID. And I think that helped tremendously.
Yeah. That's lovely. I think it goes to show, I think focus and belief, those are things that I will take back from that conversation. But in terms of trajectory, personally, as you were going from one position to the other, what were things that, in a hyperscale environment that we don't get to see that you were witnessing on a day-to-day basis? Maybe challenges around hiring, maybe challenges around execution, challenges around new initiatives. What was the structure like to decide some of this?
So, again, you have to think about what is the biggest opportunity you want to go after. Sure. And you have to have the right team to go after it. So what was truly amazing in this journey was that we had a team where you put out ambitious goals in front of them and you work with them and they actually cater to that whenever you ask them. Right? For example, in the early stages of Zomato, when we actually launched, let's say 500 cities in 6 months, to actually scaling the Zomato business to make it profitable, the asks were very, very different. But the team rose to the occasion and did that. So I think that was very important. The fungibility of the team across businesses was very important. Right? So we had very versatile folks. So if folks from dining out who actually were very, very proficient in selling ads or getting restaurants to take ads, we actually infused them into the online ordering business to sign up restaurants. That gave us tremendous space and execution. Yeah. So at Zomato, we always said that you have to be versatile. You have to be open to change. And change was just part of course for everyone, right? So it actually helped a lot.
Yeah. It goes to show, I think foundationally, a lot has been spoken about the Zomato culture, the talent density there, and I think it shows. In terms of culture specifically, I think Devinder's also now written a book, which is now open source in terms of the culture that was there. What were other distinct factors that stood out, and how does that shape, your thinking as a founder going forward as well?
One of the most important things that I've always looked at while at Zomato, even now, I'm always asking the question that the person in front of me, if I'm hiring someone or if they're already at the company, are they actually operating or building this business or this entity like their own? If you just ask the fundamental question and you even ask people that question, that why don't you reflect if you do it like that? So if you have a situation in front of you, when you take a decision, what was your mindset? Was your mindset the same as it would have been if it was your business, that solves for everything. All the quality traits that we ask for, they actually get solved by this mindset that people have. So always look for that. That was a game changer for us. And the more the number of people in your organization think like this, the better the organization would actually perform. Right. Yeah. So I think that's one thing. The other thing I could which is very important for us at Zomato, was that the we was much more important than the me. So the mission and the team always came before self. So whenever we were surrounded with situations or people or complex situations, we said, are we doing the right thing by placing Zomato and the mission before a person? And that lens helped people to actually operate much better and solve it for themselves. So I think these two things fundamentally were mind-blowing. And I think we are privileged, or I think we're unique or special in a way to have a team which has a very large proportion of people who operate like this at most times.
Yeah. No, absolutely, it shows, and I love how simplified that is. Those feel simple, but I'm guessing they're difficult in execution and to find to search for, right? Somebody like them. But lovely to know that. I think the other part of the conversation, right, which is that your personal evolution at the organization, you became COO and then you were elevated to founder. And we were talking about this, right? Dipinder Goyal, and I think the firm published a document also saying these are the founder traits that we expect somebody to believe. But we've not seen this happen in India before. I think Zomato did it. I'm not sure. I wasn't aware in my research. But what does it mean to be elevated to founder in an organization where you maybe didn't start or weren't at the inception, but have displayed founder traits?
So it's interesting that we're talking about that. So when I joined Zomato, when I met Dipi and we spoke, I joined Zomato for almost like no role. Okay. It was like, come build this. Okay. Let's do whatever it takes to build this, right? If there's something needs to be fixed, let's get in there. Something else needs to be done. Let's do that. And I think from there on to the journey that I had, the founder, and a lot of people ask this question, like, what does that title mean? How do you get that title? Yeah. It is not a title. It is just a mindset, which we spoke about earlier as well, right? Yeah. What do I look in people? Yeah. So the more you operate with that mindset, it gives you the opportunity to actually operate like a founder, take decisions like a founder. And that's what was happening. So after a couple of years at Zomato, I was very much operating like that. I could see that for myself. We could see that. People around me could see that. And suddenly we just thought, what if we just formalize this? And we didn't know what it would mean or what it would become. It didn't change much for how I was operating. But I think what came out of it was amazing, because people started asking this question, that is this possible? Yeah. Can I become a founder in a company which I did not start? Yeah. And it just it drove so much aspiration in people. It was mind-boggling to see that. Wow. They were saying there's Gigi who came in like 3 years back. He came for no role, did like recruitment to begin with, launched one small business first, then another one, and one thing led to the other. And you can actually get to that journey. And that is where it all started. And I think that was remarkable to see. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the model. And it comes back to the same thing. Like, people ask me, so when I look at people who want to join Gabit or build Gabit with us, and they ask me, what are you looking for? I said, just one thing. Would you be able to build this like you want? Most of the time and all the time. I just need to know that. Do you feel that? And I think what I've also realized is that it comes from, which we were talking about, right? Belief. So if you believe in something, if your team believes in something, they will get it done. But if you're just pushing for something and they don't have belief, they're half-hearted about it, then they will never get done. So it has to come from within, that I believe in this passion. Yeah. I believe in this mission. I want to build this, and that's why I want to do it. So again, it all goes together.
Belief and just like your own. You have to treat it like your own. No, awesome. Are there more points? I'm just drilling into this further because, you started this almost trend, and now after that, in fact, after you, there were more people who were elevated to the title, right? But how do you test for it? What do you look for exactly? Like, I'm just trying to understand more tactically what this seems like, because as you said, right, a lot of people watching this who may not be aware, they must be questioning, okay, it's possible in an organization. It could be that they're at a startup where they look up to the founders, they treat it as their own. What are other things they can do further?
So again, ask yourself the questions when you operate. Like, so one question I ask is, when I take a decision, do I keep myself in front of the organization in front of me? Right? In fact, you should, let's say you build something, you started building something in an organization, you were brought in to build that. Sure. Like, when it comes at a point where you know that this will not work for the organization, are you the first one to say this will not work? I don't care about myself, but this will not work for, let's say, the organization. Just asking that brutal question, if the answer is yes, and of course, there are a lot of things that have to come into place to be there at that vantage point, right? For example, you have to have the right capability. You have to have the right execution mindset, the thinking mindset, the ability to build with quality at pace. Those are all hygiene. A lot of people have that. But if you ask that overarching question on top of all these capabilities, you get to a mix which is super powerful.
Yeah.
And that's what we
I
all
love that.
aspire for it.
That's very powerful for sure. I think very, very interesting how the constant theme I'm hearing is you have to keep the organization first and all else equal. Organization's always ahead of you. And that's powerful. You have to question how many people can do that.
Yeah, you ask a simple question, you get the answer. And you have to ask that question to yourself. You're not answering the question for anybody else.
Yeah.
You have to ask it for yourself, and you know yourself the best.
Oh, that's lovely. I'm glad we touched upon that. The next phase, Gaurav, was, the fact that the IPO was happening. And COVID was a bad time because suddenly, I'm guessing the business was gone considerably down. And I remember watching Dipinder say that, okay, you didn't have cash in the bank for 2-3 months runway, and the IPO became the thing that would make survival happen, right? And then the business, of course, turned around after COVID, etc. Talk to us about those things, and also you were primarily you were almost the spokesperson for Zomato during the run up to the IPO, and we all know now how it's doing, etc. What was it like to leading up to the IPO? Internally, what was the belief like? Because again, new age IPO, questions around the DRHP, profitability, blah, blah, blah. What was it like?
So I think it all started with, that era started with COVID. Mm-hmm. COVID was tough for everyone.
Yeah.
In the first wave of COVID, as COVID hit, business was down to 20% of what it was.
Wow.
And it was crazy. Again, those times where you have to have immense belief in what you're doing and keep chipping at it day in, day on, day out.
What were the conversations like during those times?
I think at that time, the conversation was that, to be honest, was in the first lockdown, how do we actually help people who need food?
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, the only people who actually rose to the occasion at that time was our delivery partners. Mm-hmm. In those times when nobody wanted to put a foot outside the house with the fear that they have in their mind, delivery partners were there serving customers. Mm-hmm. That was game changing in terms of what food delivery meant for the country. Yeah. Before that, it was more whenever you need it. It was more occasional, but that told you that it become a necessity at times like this. And today we know what behavior it become. So I think that was a starting point. But from there on, we actually, of course, kept focus on the right way of building back the business. And there was nothing else but to execute, right? There was absolutely no distraction whatsoever. We were just executing, trying to understand how we can execute even well when we do it remotely because we were not used to that. And we did that. So the first part of COVID was just that. And after that, of course, the second part of COVID, things became much better. The business actually started doing better. And we could see the shape of the business was much, much better than what it was earlier. And we said, I think it's probably the time where we could actually do the IPO. And we said, let's do it. Like everything else, we just said, let's do it.
Nice.
I think it was, of course, when people talk to us about it and think about it, there were too many things which were saying probably not, right? So there was COVID. It was a major tech startup going for an IPO after 10 years of gap.
It hadn't happened
right?
at all.
Profitability was not on the cards at that point in time, but we have tremendous belief of how the business was shaping it, and we said we'll do it. In fact, when we did the roadshow, I actually missed meeting people in person. We did the roadshow on Zoom. We spent a week doing that. I would have loved to go out and just meet people and do it like it's done. But we did it over Zoom. It was super efficient. Day, night, meetings after meetings. And then we actually did it. And I think it was not only, it was great to see how the the IPO did for Zomato, but I think that great IPO became inspiration for other startups. Absolutely. And actually started the role for other people to come to the party, right? So I think that was great to see.
Yeah, no, it's become aspirational now, and Zomato's proven that, okay, if you can do it, then so many other startups can dream of achieving it in reality. I think it also starts that trend in the US, the trend of, consumers owning the stocks that they consume on a day-to-day basis. I think that starts to happen because I'm a Zomato customer as well as a stock owner now, and there's a certain thing to say about that. So that's lovely. Any specific insights, Gaurav, to say that, hey, these are hygiene things, or this is the way an institution gets built to get ready for an IPO? Because a lot of founders, when they start, right, that's the bell is the dream, right? Eventually, that's you want to ring the NSE bell someday. You've been able to achieve it as a collective, as a team. What does it take to get there?
I think if you want to get there in a good way, you have to start from day one. I think the basic ethics and ethos of building a business remain the same, whether you're actually starting a company now or you think you want to take it to IPO later on. So I don't think it's like you can prep for it in the last 3 months of an exam. It's not like that. It doesn't work like that. So the relentless focus on customers, like customer experience. You want people to be proud of owning that stock and being a consumer and loving that. It starts from day one of building that, right? I think making sure that you're always having a very close eye on the unit economics of what you're building. You might not be able to achieve a profitable unit economics from first day one, but you know what it looks like, what it can look like, what are the parts I need to work on over months, over years to get there. So I think that discipline from the beginning is super important. And I think that can be a game changer for how company performs, not just at the IPO, but even after the IPO. And Zomato is a great example for that from the beginning, right? The pace and the focus on just customer experience is mind-blowing for us. And I think feel great to be part of that journey, to be learning from that journey. I think that's a cornerstone to building a company which is actually ready for IPO, but more importantly, as I said, like IPO is just the beginning, right? Yeah. What you do after that matters a lot. It is just a milestone.
Absolutely. No, that's lovely. I think very, very strong foundational learnings. In fact, that gets me to the next part of your journey, right? Knowing all of this, being a part of this phenomenal journey, 2015 to 21, I think 6-7 years of just intense pace, scale, execution. You now decide that, okay, it's time for, to follow something that you discovered during COVID, which is health. I'd love to understand your personal journey with health first, right? Like, how did you discover that, okay, this is something you were mentioning before we started the conversation, that was COVID. If you can dive deeper into, okay, what was it about the mission that sort of motivated you to take this forward? And many would consider that, okay, 2 months after the IPO, you were the face. Okay, what was the decision like? Like, what prompted you to actually take the leap of faith and start another journey? And now you're building Gabit. We know you took some time off, if I'm not wrong, to then start working on Gabit. Talk to us through that journey.
So so COVID, of course, was very tough for all of us. But one thing that COVID, it was actually paused everything we were doing otherwise. Right? So prior to COVID, I was decently active, but not like as healthy as I am right now, and or not so conscious about what my health is and what I'm doing about it. So in COVID, travel stopped. I used to travel a lot earlier. So started going to the gym regularly, playing regularly, eating more sane food most of the time, slept better, not on flights as much, but at home. And I realized in 6 months it's transformed my health. I lost 15 kgs, lost 14 years of metabolic age. I was 49 metabolically when I was 39. And now I'm 35 and I'm actually 43.
Wow.
And that was a game changer. And I realized that this true essence of longevity or living healthier and longer comes from these basic things around fitness, nutrition, sleep, stress. And at that time, I had this thought that whenever I want to build, next, I want to build like a company which does this for millions of people. This is massively impactful. Like giving somebody more years of healthy life, there's no better karma than that. Yeah. And there's no better passion that you can go after. Sure. So that was a thought. And of course, at that time, I was super busy with building Zomato, all that was going on. And then we decided to do the IPO. So fully consumed. After the IPO, I thought I was in a great place. Zomato was in a great place, more importantly. And I said, I want to build for this mission. Took a year to just like meet people, met a lot of people in India, globally, doctors, scientists, founders, to understand if I want to build for this mission of enabling, let's say, people to live healthier and longer, how should I build it? What are consumers looking for? What is out there? Because before that, I had only my journey, and that can't be the basis of just building this. And after that year, when I had the idea of how we want to build this, then we started building with the team. We've been building for the last almost 1.5 years now. Yeah. Launched the venture formally in January this year. It's called Gabit. It's a take on good habits. Yeah. Doing that now.
Lovely. No, I'm very excited to know further about it. But any significant learnings to share from a point of view that, hey, this is what I discovered during that 1 year. And considering that, okay, you've had a super successful career. I'm guessing the chips are very like consequential in nature this time. What was the left brain side of you telling you in terms of, okay, the market opportunity? How did you reason it out as a founder? What was that thesis like?
So again, very passionate about building this mission, right? So once you get into that
belief is there.
So that you want to do. So I think that's important. And after COVID, people have realized that health is very important for them.
Yeah.
And I think better health should be a privilege for everyone. So we're building a company which is aspirational in its offerings, but it's affordable, right? So that's very important to us.
Sure.
And in the sense, if you want to, if you look at the area, for example, anybody's priority today, like if your basics are met, anybody's priority today should actually be health. That should be number one priority. And that's what it makes the space very, very interesting.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, that's lovely. And on a personal front, this is beyond the business side. This is like mostly right brain. What are things that, we don't realize and get wrong about health? Now that you were mentioning, and I was sharing my journey in the last year, I've also lost some 14 kilos. I've been the fittest I've ever been in my life. And I realize the importance of it now. But what were the core learnings that made you really passionate again about the core objective? I love the mission because it's something I resonate with strongly, and I'm sure a lot of people watching will. But what are things that maybe people who don't recognize about health that you would like to point out?
Yeah, so the things that we found out about, and in that year when I was actually thinking about how to build this, it's very interesting for me when I realized a couple of things. One was that health is interconnected, whereas solutions around you mostly are not.
Yeah, they're very specific to a couple of things.
So, for example, if you want to get to an optimal way to live healthier, longer, lose weight, people just think that either fitness can help them or just nutrition can help them. But fitness, nutrition have a role to play. Sleep has a very important role to play. Stress has a very important role to play scientifically if you want to lose weight. Healthy skin for that matter. If you go to a dermat, the first question they ask you is not about what do you put on your skin. The first question is what do you eat?
Yeah.
Nutrition has a huge role to play in skin or healthy skin. Sleep and stress have a scientifically huge role to play in healthy skin. That's what I realized, and I think that was game changing. The other thing I realized was that there's a lot of information around people, and people end up just picking up stuff and just dropping it, right? So the adherence to doing something is not easy. And I realized that the thesis has to be built around something that you can do sustainably for life. So one thing I realized is that if you want to pick up something for your health, for your better health, and there's so much around you, try to pick up something that you can continue for life.
Yeah.
Don't pick up something which you can only do for 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Don't be extreme, but just pick that up and do that for life. The impact is tremendous. So these are two things that I really realized when we were actually thinking about this. And that's what we're building this thesis on.
Yeah, the interconnectedness and sustainably doing so. Amazing. I think that's lovely. We get to, how the construct comes about. But now that you have the thesis, there's belief, what were learnings that or processes that maybe you established from day one? That was it's still a big saying at Zomato that it's always day one. But foundationally, what were things that, as an experienced founder, you were putting on the table and establishing as principles that guide the way forward for Gabit? What were some of those?
A lot of time you get asked this question even earlier when I was building Zomato, even now, what is the moat of building a successful business, right? And the only moat that we figured when we look back at our journey was that execution is the only moat. There is no other moat. Look at food delivery for that matter, right? Food delivery is as simple as picking up food from a restaurant and bringing to a customer. How differentiated can that idea be? Right? But what actually you see today is well-executed companies who've just executed like crazy, been responsible for each other's growth, and that's where they stand today. So I think that is one of the very important tenets. So when we build this, execution has to, and great execution comes in different form and shape, right? For example, if you're building some formulations, how focused are you on the quality of those and the impact of those? When you're thinking about customers, how deeply are you thinking about customer experience, right? So it comes in different facets, but it has to be there everywhere. And that has to be the DNA for everybody operating in the organization.
That's lovely. Focus on execution. I've heard that a couple of times, but the way you, mentioned that it has to build into other things as well is very interesting. Were there any templates, Gaurav, that you can share in terms of, okay, these are the kind of people I want, or these are the kind of processes that we'll establish, or these are things that we will never compromise on? Apart from, let's say, execution, what were some of those things?
So, for example, there are quite a few things that you operate with, right? So you say a lot of times you have questions. What should I do? at this point in time. I've always realized that if you just answer what is the right thing for a customer, you get to the right answer. Just like answer that simple question. So at this point in time, what do we write for the customer? Right? You asked about people. I say the same thing. Again, I think we have to be very honest with ourselves.
Yeah.
Will you be able to build this like you want? Do you believe in it as much as I do, or close to, or do you think you can get to that point? So I think it's that. When it comes to processes, I think anything extreme is not good. If you tie yourself too much in processes, it hampers pace, flexibility. But if you don't have any processes, it leads to chaos. So you have to find the right contextual balance of how much process, how much fluidity, right? Sure. So all this comes to play. And I think you have to, and I think I've also realized that it's not necessary that what one thing works in one context will work in the other one as well. So you have to be very, very open-minded, saying, okay, in this context, what makes sense? And put the customer in front of you, and you'll be able to get to the almost the right answer most of the time.
Lovely. Really, really fascinating. Let's get to the business in itself now. If you can talk through again, maybe from, like you mentioned, right? It has to be interconnected. From what I understand, Gabit now has an entire ecosystem. So there are these smart rings, which can help track what your body vitals are so that you can actually act upon them. Then there will be a nutrition angle to it, which you can have curated meals that will, go into your body. And then there is the skincare aspect of it as well. How does all of this come together? And also a lot of conventional startup advice goes like, hey, do one thing well. Don't launch too many things together. And so other health companies also are doing maybe a couple of things really well and, focus that way. But you're now going with this ecosystem approach that comes together. How does that work? And what is the overall business model? What is the thinking? How are you looking at the future? Would love to know.
So the ecosystem play or the interconnectedness that we've actually leveraged is powerful. And we believe that's how health should be addressed. And that's why we are actually picking that up. And by the way, that makes Gabit unique, not just in India, but globally as well. That's our strength. Sure. And in terms of focusing, we are saying that we will actually start with one or two health goals. We'll use this as the thesis, but we'll solve those health goals very deeply. For example, the health goals that we started with are weight loss and healthy skin. And we're saying within these, we will actually offer products to customers. If they want to use products, we'll offer subscription-based plans for fitness and nutrition because they're fundamentally important. And we'll empower them to track health markers extensively through various tracking tools that we have or AI tools that we have so that they can actually take a better decision for themselves. They can understand what's happening to their health. And we've actually layered a layer of coaches where they can also take help from them to understand data. A lot of time what happens is you can track all of this, but you don't know what to do with it. Right? So I think that's what we're trying to do. And our belief is that these are very important areas to start with. And eventually we'll actually add more important health goals to these. But if you look at, for example, like weight loss, 1 in every 3 people are overweight in India and globally. And being overweight is a starting point for all diseases that you can think of, most of them, like heart diseases and so much that we know, right? Type 2 diabetes. So it is very important to address that. If you look at, for example, healthy skin, we don't think of skin from a health standpoint, right? You'll be surprised to know that the largest number of doctor visits that happen globally are for skin concerns. They almost account for 1/3 of doctor visits done globally. Right? So it is a very important area. And again, we limit ourselves to just using good products. But the impact that nutrition has and stress has and sleep has on skin is crazy.
Yeah. No, I can strongly resonate personally as well. And these are just very important things to note on. In terms of direction, right? When you're trying to align so many different capabilities, do you hire for separate capabilities as well? What is the internal ethos to say that, okay, we have to build this in an interconnected manner. So we'll have to build expertise across disciplines. Also, personally for you, I'm guessing this is a new territory, right? Even though it starts with passion, you still have to educate yourself and bridge the gap when it comes to skincare, nutrition, all of that, where you are probably not an expert, but you have to ensure that considering this is health, you can't go wrong with the customer. What are those things like?
So you're right. So Again, the thesis of great execution is that you actually deeply build solutions which lead to impact for customers. And in each of the areas that I'm talking about, we actually started working with experts from the beginning to build those programs or build those formulations. For example, our formulations for skin are dermatologist developed, not tested.
Yeah.
Right? So they've been working with us from the beginning on these formulations. Similarly, on our nutrition programs and our fitness programs, the top experts in the country have collaborated with us to actually build those programs. Like very few people can have access to those kind of experts. But because they're actually built the program with us now, and we have used tech to scale, so many people can have access to that kind of program which can help them. So I think it starts with using the right expertise to build these programs and products, and that's what we have done. And eventually, that's the way to actually take more and more health goals to people for them to pick it up.
Got it. Awesome. And you've launched earlier this year, which means you've now seen about like 6-7 months of feedback. What is the response from a consumer's lens? Does the consumer care about one solution? Is it very goal oriented sometimes to say that, okay, weight loss is my concern and that's the lower hanging fruit, right? Because everybody wants to look better or like feel better first before they target other things. How much of India cares about health? These are all questions that are coming to mind because it feels like, these are things that can be obstructions to your pathway. What's the learning on that front?
So I'll talk about like both the goals separately, but like if you look at healthy skin, we've actually designed all our offerings either on skin concerns, on skin types to actually be very targeted. And the initial feedback has been great on the products. Like we invested more than a year and a half to build these formulations. We said no to so many things and so many iterations, but finally we're seeing those results and have amazing customer love stories coming for our skincare products. And I think it's interesting to see how people, intuitively when you talk to someone and you tell them nutrition has an impact on skin, they get it. Like, you're right.
Yeah.
Like you eat something which doesn't go well with your body and you have an acne on your skin, right? So people get that. So once you educate people, they're very quick to pick this on. That's what I realized. On the other side, if you look at, I've been very surprised to see how many people want to track their health markers. When we launched our Gabit Smart Ring, I thought that only probably in the beginning, only the tech forward or slightly younger folks will actually adopt it. 45% of our ring users are 40 years and above.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So if you basically give an option to people, good aspirational products, but they can be affordable, people will adopt them. I think what is also helping is coaches. For example, they know that they have coaches who can help them understand this data. Right? So people want to track their health. They want to understand what's happening. How can they improve it? And because of that reason, what we've done is we actually invested even more, saying, okay, if people want to do that, we will bolt on every important health marker onto a wearable, let's say. So we have, for example, bolted on all the pillars of health on our smart ring. So there's fitness that you can track. There is sleep that you can track. It tracks your stress levels as well. Plus we bolted on nutrition also because we have an app. So if you log your food daily, I can give you a full calorie balance for the day. Right? So we're trying to do as much as we can. So we bolted on resting heart rate, view to max. So important health markers. And to your point, what we're seeing is when people look at Gabit, the initial entry point or experience for Gabit is for a particular health goal. So somebody will come for a skin product.
Right.
But once they come into the ecosystem, they say, I can take nutrition for as well. I can actually track myself as well. Somebody would come for weight loss and then they would see the entire ecosystem. So yeah, that's what's going on right now.
Got it. Very interesting. I think that makes a lot of sense. In the year and a half leading up to the launch, was there a temptation or was there constant, let's say, feedback loops? Were you trying to test a couple of things every now and then, or did you say that no, we'll figure out all the guardrails, we'll figure out the entire ecosystem? Because it feels like there are a lot of stakeholders beyond the customer, which is like, get the coaches right, get the dermas right, get the nutritionists right. How were you aligning some of these other stakeholders together? What was the pitch to them?
Sure. So I think the pitch to them was that we are on this mission to build the most impactful and loved health and wellness company in India, right? And we actually try to put the best people together to do this. As I told you, starting the experts, plus the coaches that we got on. So we have a full dedicated team of coaches, nutrition coaches, we have fitness coaches, we have even psychology experts. They're clinical psychologists, which help people understand their habits, help them understand why do you have these habits and how can you break these habits. Like we deeply understand human behavior. So that is the kind of team that we've built. And the H2 of last year was just trials for us. So we were ready in July last year. From July till December, we were just trying out whatever we had built, taking feedback from customers on the nutrition plan that we were building, the fitness plan that we were doing. For example, we do live fitness classes because we realized that live fitness classes done from home can be a game changer at your convenience. And that too done in a group because it's more fun rather than doing it alone. So we tried all of that. And then officially, once we had done and tried and tested everything, we actually launched in January. But to be honest, we're still learning. Keep talking to customers, keep getting feedback, keep refining what's happening. And that's the journey we're on.
Oh, very exciting. What I'm taking back is, considering that you had the experience with Zomato before that as well, I think a lot of core learnings to say that, okay, you have to align multiple different parts. So you keep that in mind, then do the trials, get the products right, ensure everything is in place, and then launch and keep iterating. So I'm loving the fact that you can see a wider picture, which most people will not be able to. And I think that becomes a huge advantage. This is very interesting, Gaurav. Thanks for sharing. On the capital side, right? There was a PR announcement that you raised some capital. A lot of people are now talking about, okay, the fact that India will see this wave. We'll see more of folks like you who've operated at scale, built great companies, and now are in their second leg because of a personal mission, because of a belief, because they can, right? They have the skills and wherewithal to do it. What do you think about this trend that will come in India? How do you think about second-time founders, serial founders that will come up? And B, when somebody like you goes to raise capital, I'm guessing you have leverage, right? You are, of course, renowned in terms of the talent opportunity that exists. People want to invest in people who've been there, done that. So you must have had options. How did you think about the capital raise yourself? I would love to know your thoughts on both these aspects.
So in getting the right investors or partners on board, I think the thought is actually simple. They should be belief. It's no different from getting a co-founder or hiring a very critical team member, right? So you have to have people who have belief in what you're building, who are there with you for the longer term in terms of what you're building. And from an ecosystem standpoint, it's a great time to build in India. There's so much opportunity. There's so many people transacting for different spaces. Online is growing. And at the same time, you have slight bit of maturity coming in with people who've done this earlier and trying to do this. At least they're using the learning they've had earlier to do this. So they can think a bit bigger. They can orchestrate a larger vision and execute hard to do that. So I think it's a great time and this will only get better.
Lovely. I'm glad to hear that. And I think a lot of folks like you will champion this wave. I'd love to hear, we've spoken about things that you were clear on. What were things that you perhaps didn't know, didn't have any idea, or were surprisingly wrong on? Were there any surprising learnings along the way that, shook you and then that shaped your mindset going forward?
So, again, when you start building, you have to be very open-minded in terms of what will work, what will not. And you're trying a lot of things.
Sure.
For example, to be honest, the investment that we made in our tracking tools. So we have our smart ring. We've also launched CGM. We've also launching a smart scale now. And more importantly, let me talk about the ring. It took a lot of effort and research for the last 1.5, 2 years to actually launch something like this, to build the tech. But you don't know, it's a new form factor. You don't know what will be the adoption, how much will people like it, will they really want to do it or not. And you're always going in with a gut feel of saying, okay, let's do this because this makes sense. And I think that journey you have to cover. So you have to persevere during that time to believe in yourself and say, okay, we will try what we do and go to the basics. Like, as I said, build a good quality product, make it affordable, and figure out what could come in the way of doing it. For example, it is very clear to me that not everybody will be comfortable or be able to understand what to do with these health metrics. And if you're not able to understand, you will drop it. You will keep it on the side. So we built a layer of coaches to actually help people do that. So I think these are some of the things that we learned along the way and we bolted on. And very pleasantly surprised with how people are doing this. Still early for us, but I think we just need to make sure that we keep talking to customers, understanding what they need to do, and keep building up that.
Got it. No, that's lovely. In terms of, you briefly mentioned that the trend is very strong in terms of people wanting to take course and take health in their own hands. In terms of revenue pools, I'd love to understand if this is large enough in terms of, it sometimes also feels a counter argument that I could play and maybe devil's advocate here, is that people aren't willing to spend too much because the people who care about health and can pay a lot are perhaps only a small fraction still in the country. Is that an accurate statement? If not, what is the consumer sentiment around the health products?
So again, what we realized definitely after COVID that health is important for people. Now, for different people, different aspects of health might be important.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you also need to make sure that health is affordable by people, right? For example, if you look at our skincare range, they are probably one of the best formulations in the country right now. Is the first skincare range infused with superfoods, prebiotic and probiotic that we've done. And we made it very affordable for people. So you can try out a product at 500 rupees, but the impact that it gives you is phenomenal. Similarly, for our, we've done the same for our smart drink. So if you give people something which is impactful for them, people are willing to actually try that out and use it. And they will only start with what is very important for them. They might not go in for health in entirety. Somebody might want to try their overweight as an issue. Somebody wants to try and reverse the diabetes. Somebody wants to actually look at the skin and make sure that's healthy. But if you just make a good quality product, which is affordable, they're willing to try. Like, I was pleasantly surprised by, I'll tell you this. So when we launched our skincare line, let's say, so when we were launching Zomato, when we launched 500 cities, I really understood the different states and the cities in India, right? Names of it, right? We hadn't come across all of that. When we actually launched the skincare line, I was pleasantly surprised by seeing that there were even more newer cities and states that I came to know of, right? Because people were just ordering from wherever they wanted to. So that was very interesting to see.
Super. No, that's super cool. I just have a fun question on the consumer bit, which is that, hey, there's so much, we were discussing before the show again, right? There's so much clutter around content when it comes to health. And you mentioned that, education will be a key component of how you proceed. What is the way to break through clutter in this market, and how can consumers also just educate themselves with a reliable way, because otherwise it just feels so overwhelming on social media now.
I think whenever you consume any information, there'll be multiple experts, multiple people talking about different things, multiple concepts coming into bear. My learning from all of that has been that if you just understand and listen to people, but try to distill the fundamental thesis behind it, they come down to the same things. People are pretty much talking about the same things, right? For example, when we talk about nutrition, eventually, whether you talk about intermittent fasting, whether you're talking about any sort of diet that people want to do, it comes down to the fact that you have to eat less and you have to eat nutritious food, which is diverse. Just comes down to that, right? So I think if you just distill these learnings, all the things that you have to just fundamental things that eat less, your body needs only that much, and eat nutritious food, diverse food, I think you'll be fine. Every theory will actually boil down to the same thing. If you talk about, like, example, different types of workouts or different types of things that people do on fitness, again, it talks about the same thing. You should actually be consistent with it. So if you have to be consistent, you have to do something which is fun for you. You can't force yourself to do something for life.
Right.
And do things which are diverse, because everything has a role to play. Like a strength workout has a different role to play. A functional workout has a different role to play. Cardio has a different role to play. Yoga has a different role to play. And you can't say that I can do just one which compensates for the other. Right? But do things that you can follow for life. And again, let it be fun for you. So I think it just boils down to those basic things. You just have to be honest enough to actually say, I have heard this. What does this mean? Okay, this is what it means. And then that's what I should do.
I love that. I think that simplifies it really well. I think that's going to be a great formula for me as well as I think about it. In terms of habits, right? You often on Twitter shared the James Clear book also. What are things, because, everybody's also looking for just hacks, right? So if there are a couple of 2-3 habits that can be core to health that can solve for a bunch of things, what would they be, Gaurav?
Again, for example, even for my journey, when I started my journey of this health journey, I realized a couple of things that I was doing was helping. To pick up any new habit, it's good to have, like, when you're trying to change behavior, it's difficult. But if you bolt on that behavior onto something that you were doing already, you can actually build on it.
The habit stacking.
Just anchoring, for example. That's what it talks about. That's what the book talks about. So, for example, in my case, when I was building my habit of just going to the gym regularly, I bolted it on top of dropping my daughter to her bus stop every day. So I used to do that every day at 7 a.m. I said, as soon as I do that to her, I will go to the gym from there. Super helpful.
Yeah.
So when vacations hit, it was difficult because I hadn't still built that habit.
Yeah.
Right. So I could see I have to force myself. Right. But as soon as I was just dropping out of the bus stop, that habit came back. And of course, after 1 or 2 cycles, that became a habit. But I think anchoring really helps. And I'll just reiterate this. I think I've fundamentally realized that you have to pick up things that you can do for life. And for that, you have to pick up things that you like. You'll find your way. Like for me, playing tennis gives me that pleasure. So I said, okay, I will do my workout, but I will also play tennis from time to time. So I am active most of the days. So those kind of things, yeah.
No, awesome. I think this has been really, really interesting. We've covered a diverse range of ground. As we sort of go to conclusory aspects, I'd love to know a couple of other things about the journey, right? As a consultant for 10 years, were there things that you thought were helpful? We spoke about the things that you had to not do, but were there things that were helpful that you took back from consulting days and that still come to use when you are an operator?
A lot. I think consulting is a training ground that everybody should go through. Like,
tell us more.
Very clear about it. The only thing that consulting doesn't teach you as much is taking decisions on your own. Besides that, it's an amazing training ground for how you learn, how you program manage well, how you can think. It's great. So I think it's in my DNA, and I don't have to. It's like subconscious behavior. It's like driving a car. I don't have to think now.
Yeah,
it's already there. And the combination of consulting and then living in a building a fast-paced mission like Zomato, any startup, is mind-blowing.
Yeah, and it shows, I think.
That's the combination.
Lovely. No, I think that's super helpful for people thinking if it's a trade-off. It's not.
It's not a trade-off.
Yeah. No, awesome. That's super nice to know. I'd love to also understand, maybe go back, a bit further. You went to IIT Delhi, then you went to IIM Calcutta, both great institutions revered in the country. Are there any significant learnings that you picked up during your foundational days that you still keep core? Like anything specifically from IIT Delhi or IIM Calcutta that you have taken back?
Yeah, since the beginning of my education, starting from DPS Agro, by the way, not just these institutions, I've realized the benefit of just being around great people. Like, even DPS Archipur was like that.
Yeah, Archipur is a very, very strong
IIT Delhi was like that. IIM Calcutta was like that. Kearney was like that. Zomato was like that. Even the startup ecosystem was like that. So I think the rub-off it has on you in terms of like multiple ways, it's mind-boggling.
Yeah. So, tell us more. What does that mean? Like, we always hear these things, right? That surround yourself with the best people. You're the best version of the 5 people around you, blah, blah, blah. How does that actually work?
So even when people ask you, right, who's your mentor, where you learn from, I think you can learn from anyone next to you. You can learn what to do. You can learn what not to do.
Yeah.
You just have to be in that mindset. So I think I've just learned tremendously from people around me in how to think about something, how to speak, like basic things as well. Yeah. So I think that's important. Secondly, of course, when you look at people and what they do and what they achieve, that's inspiring for you in many different ways. Yeah. You get surprised sometimes by very young folks in terms of what they're trying to do. Yeah. So again, just be very open in terms of what's happening around you and just try to pick up small things.
Yeah. That's lovely. I love that. In terms of, the other side of maybe life, this is a question I ask and I often receive interesting responses, which is that if I had to ask a group of your friends to describe who Gaurav is, what would they say?
Very energetic.
Okay.
Very active. Yeah.
Awesome. Interesting. Energetic and active. Yeah, I would have also guessed that. The vibe shows and it's very evident. If you weren't building what you're doing right now with Gabit, what would you be doing instead?
Building something else. I think I just love building.
That's your DNA now.
Yeah.
Nice. One thing that I also ask is, what is that one strength that you exhibit more than anything else? And perhaps one, not weakness, but one thing that I often say fear, in the sense like, what do you think is a blind spot?
So I think the strength that I've realized over a period of time, and I think that helped me transition from consulting to, let's say, building Zomato and even building Gabit now, is the ability to be able to switch your mindset. And I think that's the fundamental thing. When people say, oh, I can't do this, I don't know how to do this, it's not about learning as much as it is about your mindset. Like, can you actually, do you believe that you can do it?
Yeah.
So I think that's one thing that I've realized has tremendously helped me. In terms of what one should be wary of, or what I am wary of, and always is that I never want to stop learning. Like I want to be learning better health as a space now, because I'm trying to understand what can be done. Or even when I'm building right now, even after building Zomato or a startup that big, that crazy, I still believe there's so much to learn on how to build a company. You have to literally think like that. And sometimes consciously you have to tell yourself that, right? That what worked there might not work here. So you have to be able to do that. So, yeah.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Looking back at the learnings at Zomato, right? Were there any things that you think were not regrets, but things that could have been done better, challenges that could have been navigated better? What were some of the contra things that you wouldn't want to take back? I'm sure there are very few, but are there anything significant there?
So I think in any journey, not everything that you'll do will actually be right.
Sure.
That's the whole part of building something.
Absolutely.
There'll be some learnings, there will be some failures, there'll be something that'll go well. And I'll give you an example by what I mean. For example, for the longest time in food delivery, we were not delivering orders ourselves. Restaurants were delivering orders themselves. And we actually said, and we wrote a blog and we said it multiple times saying that this is the only way to build food delivery profitably, where you don't deliver and restaurants deliver.
I had no idea.
Yeah. For 2 years. 2 years we did that.
Oh, wow.
After launching.
After launching.
17. Yeah, absolutely. After launching food delivery.
Oh, wow.
Well, Swiggy was delivering themselves. And then we realized after 2 years that we were wrong. Deliberately wrong. Like, we were lagging much behind in food delivery. And we were not able to deliver the experience we want to give to our customers. And we were the first ones to say we were wrong. We actually then wrote a blog post saying we were wrong. And we will correct this. And then we corrected with absolutely, we never looked back. So I think I've realized that there will always be these things, but how you can be the first person to say, I am wrong, and then just don't carry any baggage whatsoever, and just fix it at tremendous pace and quality that can actually lead you to much better outcomes. So yeah, that's what.
Yeah, that's very powerful. I think. Thanks for sharing. That's interesting. Maybe we didn't get a chance to maybe touch upon ancillary businesses. Like everybody knows about the food delivery business, but like Hyperpure is scaling well from what we understand in terms of the reports. We're all hearing about the Blinkit sort of growth trajectory. What was the internal compass like? Like I've also heard from some mutual connects that Zomato really thinks that all of commerce in some shape or form can come, which means that, okay, there's food delivery, but there are other things as well. There was a brief Shiprocket investment also that had happened. Can you talk about some of the other things? We briefly touched upon this earlier, but maybe specific initiatives?
Yeah. So, if you talk about Zomato in general, as I mentioned earlier, it's all about the restaurant ecosystem. So whenever we thought about offering, we said, what can add to this ecosystem, either for restaurants or for users?
Okay.
And can we meaningfully put our efforts and resources behind it? And that's how we built it. If you really ask me what's the business model of Zomato, it's actually delivering superior customer experience at scale. That is what it is.
Yeah.
Blinkit is a classic example of that.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing right now.
Right.
So I think that's what being the business model. That's how we think about it. So we can actually, if we can do that, and there's a lot of things within this whole statement, right? It's whether you can do profitably, can there be scale, can you put your efforts and resources behind it?
Yeah.
So that's how I think
Got it.
we've been building Zomato.
Very fascinating. In terms of just so this foresight, right? Like looking years into the future. So with Zomato, it feels like you looked years in and said that food delivery will become commonplace. Everybody will start ordering online. With Blinkit also, it seems like, you've looked into the future and be like, okay, retail has to be disrupted in some shape or form. This could be one way. With health, you're doing the same. Do you actively think about what the future will look like and how you can serve it? Is there a formula to say that founders should definitely think about the future, predict it in some shape or form, and then build it out?
We never looked into the future, to be honest.
You didn't?
No, we couldn't. You can't.
Okay.
It's such a dynamic environment. You cannot.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. What you're doing, what your priorities are, they change every 3 months. Because
so that itself is so important.
Yes. So you have to be aware of that.
Okay.
That this will change. And that's why being adaptable to change is super important.
When it changes, you can act upon them.
Yes, you can. You have to. And sometimes you will lead that change.
Yeah.
Right. You will actually make that change happen. So I think that was very important. So there's a difference between foresight and belief. that you believe that whatever I will do, I will take it to a point that will make sense for me, customers in restaurants, let's say, for food delivery. So I think it was all about making sure that whenever we're executing, we're keeping our mind, our eyes on the right metrics. We're making sure they're trending in the right direction, and you're doing whatever you got to actually do that. And I think whenever you think about like fundamental propositions which will make work, as you said, right? For example, will food delivery be the big thing, or let's say quick commerce will be the big thing. It all comes down to, again, the simple question: what is good for a consumer? So even when you think about quick commerce, and there were so many questions about quick commerce earlier, and we were thinking about it, my point to everybody was that if you, let's say, if you order, let's say, hypothetically, a television, right, and I could get you that in 10 minutes in your house, would you be happy as a customer?
Yeah.
So if you would be happy about the customer, then the customer would love it. So now if there is a practical way, a unit economics led way to doing that, why not we do that?
Yeah. So that question.
And now we're seeing that for many things it's making sense.
Yeah.
And consumers are choosing that. And again, the other fundamental thesis of scalability we forget is just behavior. So if you want to scale something, you have to build behavior. True for food delivery, true for quick commerce, true for health. If you can change behavior, you can scale a proposition. Yeah. Like food delivery, for example, people used to say, who orders food from outside? Like, we eat like 2-3 times from, India used to eat like 2-3 times outside a month, like 6-7 years when we started all of this. Today, it's become human behavior to order Zomato or food delivery like almost every day or every week.
And you stick to it.
You stick to it.
Yeah.
Same for it's happening for quick commerce. I believe the same will happen for health as well because it's so important. And those are the business will scale where you can actually build that behavior.
Very interesting. This behavior point is very, very fascinating to understand. One thing that I like to also understand, Gaurav, is that, as a founder, like part of the job is, of course, execution. You've emphasized it a lot, but also it's about looking at like zooming out and looking at other things. And I'm guessing when you're in an environment like Zomato or a new company that you're setting out to do, there's so much to do. How do you prioritize doing other things in the sense that, like, how do you zoom out? What is the time that you spend with yourself so that you can be more productive when you're in the thick and thin?
I think you have to spend time with yourself every day. There is no substitute for that.
And there's a process around it. You build discipline to it?
No, it has to become subconscious behavior. All these things which you want to do for life and you want to do well, you can't push yourself to do that. When you start, it'll be a push. So when you start, you might have to calendarize it, right? But when you understand the importance of it, or when you do it for some time, then it becomes your habit, right? And then it has to be part of your subconscious. So I think that's what you do. You have to reflect on what's happening, where you're going every time and again. You have to do that. And I think prioritization, again, comes from very, 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 very basic principle of prioritization is, again, whatever you're building, what value is it adding to customers? And if it's adding value to customers, you should be doing it. Right? So that's very important.
Super. No, this has been amazing. I think a lot of interesting things. For the second last question, Gaurav, I'd love to understand that, considering that we've discussed a bunch of things, but maybe what we've not is the stakeholders that matter otherwise, right? Like, so you discussed the team, organization, execution, belief. For people who are on the other side, right? Like in the case of Zomato, restaurant partners, delivery folks, how do you, deal with them, and what is the communication to them to ensure that, you're also mission oriented? With Gabit, you're now with a lot of diverse stakeholders, again, coaches, dermas, nutritionists. You mentioned that, you have to communicate the belief to them, but what is it? How do you not incentivize them, but how do you manage their expectations? Because you will have to keep the customer on top, then it'll be the team, etc. What is the framework for these stakeholders?
So I think the framework for these stakeholders is nothing different.
It's the same.
You have to believe they're part of your team. You have to operate they're part of your team.
And that is only them.
Yes, that's the only way to operate. Right. As you think about this, for Zomato, the delivery network or the delivery partners is
the blood and soul.
Yeah, is super important. It is the most critical thing, and that's how we operate with them. Right. Even for example, when I think about Gabit, when I think about coaches or the experts, they're as part of the team as anybody else, and we operate with them like that. Right. The thesis of what we are building, why we are building, why the customer is important, the same messages, same communication, the same belief has to be there, right? And you have to, as a founder, you have to believe in that. That's very, very important.
I love that. I think the passion shows, and to know that you have to prioritize everyone equally is a very, very core learning. This has been great. I think the final question that I often ask, and this is more stereotypical, but if we can, let's say, go back to, in your case, the IMC graduation day, right? And if you could tell yourself a couple of things, and this is in no way to change the course of action, but just to give you the benefit of hindsight and say that the 20 years since, I think, to 2005, right? So 20 years since, whatever you've learned, if you could tell your younger self that on day zero, what would that look like? What are core learnings from this 19-year journey?
So I'll talk about one thing that would have changed my life, and one thing which is learning. I would have liked to build much earlier than I started.
Sure.
I've just loved it, and I think it's immensely powerful to me personally and what we can do. And from a learning standpoint, I think just this mindset of building for the customer is very important. So I think I could have done fundamentally better, even in consulting, if I had this mindset much on. Right? When I used to think about how should this business drive their future, right? If I just had always thought about the end customer, what can we do differently, and not about my client as much, I think I would have done things very, very differently. So I think that thesis stays on. And I think the amount of value I've found in just whenever I'm stuck at a problem saying, okay, what is the right thing to do here? The amount of value I've found is just asking that, okay, what is the right thing for a customer here? That answer is super clear.
Wow.
Right. So I think the benefit of that, and I advise all founders, everybody building, to do that, not just for themselves, but for all teams. I tell my teams all the time that whenever you're stuck, you don't need to look at me or look for anyone else to give you the answer. Just think and act, and you'll be almost every time right.
Brilliant. I love that. I think a lot of the core pointers, right? Like think about the customer, belief, ownership, execution. All of this is just what I'm going to take back from this conversation. Thank you so much for being on the show. It's been such a pleasure. We discussed so many different things, and I hope you had a great conversation.
Thank you, Jibraj. Had a great time.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hello. If you made it this far, you've probably watched the entire episode. And if you've done that, I'm really grateful. I and my team try to put in a lot of effort to ensure that we can bring the best quality content to you. So if you liked the episode, if you watched it thus far, my request to you is to share it with people, to subscribe to the channel, and to ensure that we can keep growing. We are everything and anything only because of you, our listeners. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll keep bringing to you amazing content. Cheers.